Welcome to the Small Group Leader Podcast, a podcast by small group leaders for small group leaders to be equipped and encouraged as they make disciples for Jesus. My name is Derek Lynn, and this is going to be the start of a 6-part series going through the 6 wins of a small group leader. In this episode, we'll be talking about win number 1, daily devotion to Jesus. We'll be sitting down with Alex Rodriguez, the National Director for Chi Alpha Campus Ministries and the creator of the 6 Wins of a Small Group Leader teaching. And then we'll get to talk to Sara Torres, who has been a small group leader at Texas Tech University as an undergrad, a Chi Alpha intern, and now as a grad student. We will hear about what she has learned and how her devotional life has grown through 3 different seasons of leading students to Jesus on the college campus. First, let's go ahead and listen to a clip from Alex's message on the 6 wins of a small group leader.
I was the lead director at New Mexico State University for 6 years. In our first year at New Mexico State University, we did not define what a win was for our small group leaders. We were just so happy to have volunteers that we ignored quality in effort to have quantity. So if you breathed and said that you were called, we assumed that you would be successful in spite of not receiving any direction. Now this meant that our small group leaders were trying to lead small groups without knowing how to lead small groups. So this is what happened. At the end of the year, I was doing small group leader evaluations, and I asked one leader, "How was your small group?" To which they responded, "It was awesome. It was the best year ever. I'm so pleased with what Jesus has done." I said, "That's so great to hear. So what were your one-on-ones like?" "Well, I didn't have any." "Well, then how did you further a relationship with the people in your small group?" "Well, that was kind of hard to do. I had 17 people in my small group." 17 people? I don't remember you bringing people around anywhere. "Well, out of the 17 people, we texted mainly and only one really came to small group." "Okay, well, then you didn't have 17 in your small group. You had one person in your small group. So tell me, how did you disciple the one person?" "Well, we had tea every single Tuesday and we talked about our classes." "Did you talk about Jesus?" "No, we didn't talk about Jesus. That's advanced. We were going to do that later." I say, so you spend an entire school year having tea with one person while talking university, but never talking Jesus. "Yes, that's right. It was the best semester yet." And then I said, "Okay, I love you so much, but you did not have small group. You only had a social club." And as frustrated as I was with the small group leader who did not have a small group, I had only myself to blame because I never clarified what success was in the first place. So winning and losing was all relative to the leader. And this is why it's imperative for us to define the wins for our people, because when we do not define what the win is for people, each individual is going to define it for themselves. And this is what was happening in the early years of Chi Alpha. Every small group leader understood the why of discipleship, because we love Jesus, to evoke his return to all the nations, but no small group leader could explain the how of actually making disciples. So to fix this, we began studying the practices of discipleship by asking 2 questions. Number 1, what are the practices of the best small group leaders that we see every single day? And number 2, what are the antithesis of the practices of the least effective small group leaders that we see every single day? Believing that if we can focus on the micro behaviors of leading a small group well, we will have the macro results of discipleship multiplication. These results we called the 6 wins of a small group leader, and the first one goes like this. At a conference recently, there was a session on devotional life. And the focus was on spending extravagant time with Jesus with an emphasis on reading. As Warren Wiersbe once said, leaders are readers. And as the instructor informed the audience of all the resources of authors and Bible apps and sermon podcasts, it became time for question and answer. And one honest soul asked the simple question that numerous people were thinking. Spending time with Jesus sounds good, they said. But where exactly are we to find the time? I have staff meetings and program meetings and Chi Alpha service and small groups and one-on-ones and investment raising and investment maintaining. I do not have time to spend with Jesus. What am I supposed to do? And do you see the 2 key issues that are coming from this question? Number 1 is very honest, which I appreciate. Many of us are thinking that we have too many important things to do than spend time with Jesus, which is the less important thing. And that's not accurate. And number two, many of us in ministry are susceptible to the temptation of letting serving God get in the way of knowing God. So we got to be very clear on this first point. Biblically speaking, busyness does not equal holiness. Christ-likeness equals holiness. And Christ-likeness can come from only spending time with Jesus and obeying what he says. And to be clear, there is much time that ministry demands. We have to bring people to large groups so they can capture vision and experience community. Small groups should cultivate convictions. One-on-ones do customize discipleship. But the best leaders, be it missionaries or students, understand to do anything without spending time with Jesus would be of no avail. We believe that John 15 is the promise of Jesus and also the greatest methodology for making disciples. Not what your leadership training class is, not world-class curriculum, not small group structures. The greatest methodology for making disciples is spending extravagant time with Jesus, who promises that if we abide in him, make our home with him, dwell with him, we will bear much fruit, which is disciples who make disciples who make disciples. When I say abide with him, when I say make our home with him, the word means just to rest with Jesus. You don't have to do much activity to rest with him. This is worshiping Jesus when there is no band that starts playing. This is reading the Bible beyond sermon slides. This is praying at more than just meals. This is thinking about Jesus outside of worship services. This is meditating on the gospel beyond Easter. This is not merely believing there is a God. This is being with God. And it's accompanied with the promise that we will make disciples with him. So please hear me carefully. Building a small group can be done with personality, but building disciples can only be done with God. So how do we do this? For G. Campbell Morgan, abiding was reading a biblical text 100 times over before he preached it. For Leonard Ravenhill, it was praying for 2 hours every night. For Martin Luther, it was praying for 3 hours every morning. For D.L. Moody, he said he never prayed for more than 5 minutes, but he also said he never went more than 5 minutes without praying. When it comes to abiding, the how you abide is absolutely customized. Morning, night, whatever that might be, but it's secondary to this discipline. We have to take time to be with Jesus before, during, and after we tell people about Jesus. Win number one, daily devotion to Jesus.
So now we're sitting here with Alex Rodriguez himself, the writer of the 6 Wins of a Small Group Teaching. We're going through these next 6 weeks, looking at each of these wins individually, and this week we're looking at daily devotion to Jesus, and we get to sit here and talk with Alex about that. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Just got back from one trip, about to head to another trip, so my body doesn't know what time zone it's in right now, but I'm doing really good.
So looking at these 6 wins of a small group leader, which I'm so excited to go through these. This is a teaching because we know each other. We can get into that more later. We're very
Never
close.
seen you before.
I'll take that coffee back that you're drinking. But we're close. We've been around each other for a few years, and you developed this 6 wins of a small group leader, and it very much changed the way I did small group leading and looked at how I was doing small group leading, and it helped me a lot. So I'm excited to get through all these. Why don't we start off by you just telling us that pretty much our next 6 weeks, what we're going through, and telling us what the 6 wins are.
All right, 6 wins in order. Number 1 is daily devotion to Jesus. Number 2 is every conversation leads to Jesus. Number 3 is be with your small group outside a small group. Number 4 is honor people to other people. Number 5 is delegate responsibility to create maturity. And number 6 is the grit to keep going.
I'm super stoked. I hope everybody else is excited who's listening to this. And I hope you'll follow along with us as we go through these. So looking at the first one, daily devotion to Jesus. Why was there any certain reason it was first? Was there a hat that you drew them out of and it all of a sudden came out first? How did that come about?
Yeah, daily devotion to Jesus. was first on purpose. A Bible verse that has really impacted us at Chi Alpha New Mexico State University. We just couldn't get John 15 out of our mind. That if we abide in Jesus, dwell with Jesus, make our home with Jesus, He, the King of the earth, promises to abide with, dwell with, and be with us, and then we will bear much fruit.
That's good.
That word fruit in all of Synoptic Gospels refers to one thing and one thing only, which is making disciples who make disciples who make disciples.
Yeah.
Therefore, we can interpret John 15 to say, if you spend extravagant time with Jesus, you will make disciples who make disciples who make disciples. So understanding that biblical foundation, it made complete sense that the first one of a small group leader, biblically speaking, according to the promise of God Himself, if we spend extravagant time with Jesus, if we have daily devotion to Jesus, then we're going to produce disciples who produce disciples. So that became the first win. And we noticed when you began to analyze our small group leaders who were having fruit and producing new people in the small group leading training class versus our small group leaders who had the title, but might not have had the disposition, might not have had the fruit. The difference, more often than not, was that one spent time with Jesus and the other did not. One knew the Lord, the other didn't know Him as well. One prayed, read books, worshiped the Lord well beyond worship bands, read the Bible well beyond sermon slides, and the other leader just had a stagnant devotional life. So that's when it became very clear that this is obviously biblical. It's true on paper, but we also began to see it become true before our eyes. When leaders spent time with Jesus, when they had daily devotion to Jesus, that's when they were able to make disciples who made disciples.
Yeah. When you saw them having daily devotion, everything like that, what would you count? Like, what did you see between the ones who were doing well and the ones who weren't doing as well or bearing as much fruit or being as consistent or anything like that in their daily devotion that set it apart to where you could call that daily devotion as opposed to something else? Was it them just doing a devotional in the morning? Was it them listening to Christian radio on the way to school? What counted in your mind when you saw an actual difference as that's daily devotion, if that makes sense?
Sure. We were pretty high on teaching the live dead practical tithe your time teaching. That if we give God 10% of our money, we should also give Him the best 10% of our time. So that turned out into spending 2 hours and 25 minutes a day with Jesus, whether it be individually or collectively. So on Thursday night when we had large group, that was rather simple, because you had at least 60 minutes for sure that you were guaranteed to spend worshiping Jesus, praying to Jesus, and hearing about Jesus. So on Thursday night, how are you going to spend, the other hour and 25 minutes of your time? But the way to fulfill that time was exactly like you're talking about. Our students would, they'd pray at prayer meetings, but they also pray at their home. They would read books before homework, after homework. They would read their Bible, usually averaging maybe 4 to 5 chapters a day, depending on how long they could read quickly. Some of these guys, basically all these guys, would read faster than me. But that's what it looked like. They just started to spend time on purpose with Jesus, in addition to their classwork, not to the neglect of it, and that began to have a difference in the people that they were discipling, but also in their own life. They were becoming holier. They were thinking about Jesus more. They would have these breath prayers, this thought about Jesus. Every thought was taken captive to the obedience of Jesus, and that's kind of what it looked like. It was time alone, and it was time together. Like Dietrich Bonhoeffer mentions, they both are interdependent. One influences the other. It was Christian books. It was reading the Bible. It was listening to sermons, and you could tell that it made a difference in these guys.
Yeah, dude, that's good. What would you say to the student small group leader on campus right now who might feel overwhelmed by their class load and everything like that, saying, well, if I can just get through my college time, once I go out, get a job or something like that, I'll have more time to spend with Jesus?
I would say that is idealism. That is not at all lining up with realism. We want to think that we'll have more time to be with Jesus after college. We want to think that we'll have more time to make disciples after college. But both of those are false. I feel like the role that I'm in right now is more like Chi Alpha corporate than it is Chi Alpha campus. We clock in 9 to 5. We travel 3 months out of the year. When I meet with people, it's not that same frequency that it was on campus, although I still meet with people.
Yeah.
But what's just equally true is you find that you have less time, not more, when you leave college.
Yeah.
You know, as a college student, you at least had the wonderful blessing of, you know, maybe you had a 2 to 3 hour gap of time between the school day,
Yeah.
where you could go see a movie if you wanted, or nap if you wanted, or for the diligent student, study if you wanted. You know. But that doesn't exist when you go to work. And if you did take a 2 hour break during work, you might not have a place to work anymore, you know?
Unless
So
you maybe
it's,
worked at Google.
you have to learn how to spend extravagant time with Jesus now,
Yeah.
because it's only going to get much more difficult later. And if you can learn those habits before marriage, before kids, before the 9-to-5 job with all the various assignments, you're only going to be setting yourself up for success, because you're going to be building a muscle
Yeah.
that's basically creating a muscle memory of routine.
That makes sense. What would you say to a student, small group leader, somebody? I know this was me when I first got saved, started small group leading, trying to make disciples. I viewed any type of tracking or scheduling of my devotional time as this like evil machine mechanism rather than this beautiful organic garden. And what would you say to some people who might be hesitant to actually set a goal for their time with Jesus each day rather than just let it flow as they feel, if that makes sense?
Man, that's a great question, because when you do start talk about quantifying time or quantifying anything,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to the kingdom of God, the thought that usually comes up as a rebuttal is that's legalism. To
Yeah.
spend 2 hours and 25 minutes a day when you don't feel like it is the antithesis of love. I don't believe that's true. Yes, feelings lead to actions, and that's how all relationship begins.
Yeah.
I liked a girl named Abby Thomas. I decided to pursue this girl. Feelings led to actions, which led to marriage, and she's my wife, and we're living happily ever after. So yes, feelings lead to actions. That's how relationship begins. But the way relationship continues is when feelings follow actions. When you do the things that you don't want to do because you know you need to do them.
Yeah.
Like doing the dishes for my wife, or mowing the lawn so she doesn't have to, or whatever it might, saving money, spending on her, whatever it might be. The things that I don't want to do,
Yeah.
I do because I love her. That's feelings follow actions. And I find that the more that I do
good.
these things, the more that I want to do these things.
Yeah.
And if that's true in romantic relationships, I think it's equally true in this heavenly relationship. No, I don't always want to spend extravagant time with Jesus. On a Saturday morning, I'd much rather watch college football being the first thing that I do,
Yeah.
as opposed to spend time with Jesus. You know, I think that's just, that maybe that's human nature. Maybe that's just my preference for football. I'm not quite sure. But there's things that the Lord asks that I think no Christian wants to do, if we're quite honest. You know, I love how the gospel says Jesus so loved me that he picked up a cross.
Yeah.
I do not like that Jesus says if I love him, I must pick up my cross too and follow him.
Ooh.
That's horrible news, quite honestly.
Yeah.
I love how Jesus says he's forgiven me. I'm uncomfortable when he says that I need to forgive my enemies. That's troubling, you know. Jesus asks so many things that no Christian wants to do. I have no problem praying when I need something, but then you have the Apostle Paul saying, pray without ceasing in 1 Thessalonians 5:17. So the gospel has a way of offending you. The commands of God have a way of making you feel uncomfortable. And if I wait to feel like obeying Jesus until I obey Jesus, then I will never obey Jesus. And I think that's equally true with abiding time. If I wait to feel like abiding in Jesus, I'm never really going to abide in Jesus. You know, if Christendom hinges on feelings, I think the gospel would have never reached Gentiles. I think God would have no martyrs, and I think Christ would truly have no Christians.
Come on.
If we're going to do something for the Lord, like spend extravagant time with Jesus, yes, there are going to be times when we do what we feel like spending time with God, but more often than not, you're going to have to be with God when you don't feel like it.
Yeah. That reminds me of discipline, desire, delight, progression. Then it lines up completely with what you're saying, to where you start off and you have to be disciplined, and then eventually you have a desire to do it. When you don't do it,
That's right.
You get this feeling inside you to where you're uncomfortable. You know you should have, and then you keep staying disciplined in it, and then you take delight in it.
Yes.
And you have a desire, delight, everything like that, to where it draws you to it, which is the end result I think everybody's wanting at the beginning, which they might not get, like you're saying.
Absolutely. It's like it's almost like a diet. You're changing your taste buds, you know. And I've seen so many numerous friends go on keto or paleo or whatever it might be, and they have a discipline to not drink Dr. Pepper, which then turns into a desire to not drink Dr. Pepper, which then all of a sudden somehow becomes this delight to never drink Dr. Pepper ever again. You know, it's a very strange thing. I don't understand it. But that's what happens when you go on diets. You change your taste buds, and I think this is equally true with a devotional life.
Hey, Sarah, so happy to have you on.
Of course, yeah. It's really such an honor to be here and get to talk about daily devotional to Jesus, so I'm excited.
So, when you first became a small group leader as a student, what did your personal time with Jesus honestly look like, and how has it changed or stayed the same through these multiple different seasons of life?
Yeah, I remember that when I first became a small group leader, I had a new hunger to tell others about Jesus. Like, that's why I said yes to becoming a small group leader. But because of the time commitments that I had dedicated to work and to school, that time was just kind of squeezed in when it could be. If I had time in the morning, I would spend time with the Lord. If I had time in between classes, I would spend time with the Lord. And I wouldn't say it was terrible, but it also was not sustainable. It would vary. It wasn't consistent. And through when hardships would come, I would see myself either pull away from the Lord or get closer to the Lord, but it wasn't very consistent at all. And I'm grateful for, again, the people who got to love on me, because through that, like, I got to learn a lot of how to be able to make a consistent schedule, knowing the workload I had. And then when I went into the internship, that's kind of when it, I don't know, like a new reality hit, that it's like, actually, I can't go onto campus talking about Jesus if I'm not having daily conversation with him or daily time with him. And so through the internship, I got to learn how to foster that. I got to learn how to protect that time, how to really like zone in on it and be able to help others as well in small group or roommates. And then coming into grad school now, I've made it a goal to always protect my time with the Lord. That is always happening every day. If I get off one day, then all right, the next day, like, if we need to double it, we double it. But it's like, it's very much like this needs to happen daily, because I am going out into the world and I need to be with him. And I love it that, yes, I can do it at school. And even if it's not consistently in the morning, like, if it's at nighttime or in the middle of my day, which usually happens various times of the day, but like the large chunk, if it doesn't happen in the morning, then it's like, all right, when is this happening? Because it needs to happen, because I don't know what I will confront that day, whether it's thoughts that the enemy is putting within my head or things that I see in front of me that are physically happening with my classmates or anything else like that. And so it's like that dedication needs to happen with Jesus. And so being in grad school, that's been one of my biggest things. It's like, I will protect my time with Jesus.
Yeah. That's awesome. Looking at that, and like, it's exciting hearing how much more intentional and in-depth your devotional life sounds like it's gotten. Are there times where you don't feel like spending time with Jesus? And how do you balance the have to versus want to mindsets when it comes to having a consistent devotional life?
Yeah. There have definitely been times where I'm like, I don't want to. And it's just really funny, because sometimes I think that's a mind battle. Like, that's a mind battle happening, that the enemy is trying to get you away, or even your flesh is trying to get you away from who we belong to. And so I realized that in times where my mindset was in a have to, the continuation of that discipline to be with him leads to the desire to be with him. And so in moments when I don't feel like spending time with Jesus, I have to analyze, like, why don't I want to? And it's usually the fact that I realize that I am forgetting who I get to learn more about and spend time with. And so it is in a mentality of like, am I thinking about just myself right now? Am I thinking about my situation? Do I think the situation, circumstance, or my issue is too big for the Lord? Is that why I'm pulling away from him and not wanting to spend time with him? And then when I start remembering who Jesus is, then my heart aches so much for him. And thankfully the desire grows because of the transformation that I've seen that he has done within me. And then that desire even grows to be like, I want to spend time with Jesus now, because not only what he can do within me and through me, but also what he can do in others. Like, I want to see that come true. And it's been so sweet being able to see that shift. Like, usually when I go back home, that's where it hits the, oh, I don't want to, like, I feel like if I even have my Bible out, I'm going to get some comments about through my family members, or just focus is different at home. Then I just have to remember that it's like, he changed my life. Like, he went in, transformed my heart, and is continuing to do so. And that is my desire, to see my family do that. And that is when the desire changes of like, Jesus, you can do so much more than just change my heart. You can change the hearts around me to love you. It's just, it is, I think sometimes it is the mentality of like, am I looking to myself right now? Or am I looking to my maker? Am I looking to the one who transforms and does greater than I can do?
So with like the different rhythms you've had and everything like that, are there parts of your devotional life across those different seasons that have stayed consistent?
Yes. Yeah. So definitely being in my Bible, like being in the Word, because that's how I get to know more of Jesus and who he is. And like, that's been one of the main things. It's like, I need to be in the Word. And so even though there are times where there's like couple days where I'm like, man, I haven't been in my Word, that is the goal. Like, that's the first goal, the goal to be consistent in the Word. And then the second goal would be to pray more. And I feel like sometimes that's general. Like, I don't feel like we pray enough. And if you usually ask someone like, you feel like you've prayed enough? It's just like, no. And so that's like a personal goal as well. Try to keep it consistent. And that has actually changed as well, to be able to pray on the spot. So like for classmates, they know that I believe in the Lord and I like trust in the Lord. And so sometimes they'll come up and be like, hey, do you think you can pray for my family member that they're sick? And instead of being like, yeah, I'll pray for you when I get home, like, it's very much like, yeah, we can do it right now. And sometimes again, they're not very open. They're like, no, it's okay. And it's like, okay, well, I'll do it on my own then, like right here. But sometimes it is like, okay, cool, let's do it right here, right now. And so it's been really sweet.
That's awesome. So looking at the effect our devotional life has on us, what impact do you think there is on your discipleship of others when your time spent with Jesus is lacking? Either outwardly in what you or others see, or inwardly in what you see yourself?
Yes. Yeah. So, man, the impact is crazy. Whether we notice it at first or not, it'll come out. But usually I am one to evaluate myself first. And so inwardly, what I see happen within myself is the fact that I start trusting the Lord a lot less. Like, that change is drastic. Without the communication and intentionality, trusting the Lord becomes so much harder, because I am not being reminded of his promises or his goodness or his mercy or forgiveness. And because of the lack of trust, I try to rely on myself more, and I try to control things. And when situations go out of control, like, I am a mess, whether someone else can see it outwardly, I am a mess internally. And where I had started to become more aware that I needed to reevaluate when I have and will spend time with Jesus is when I start to look at myself very negatively. And so thoughts about myself are not great. The shame that has come with previous sin starts to rise up again. And I realize that sometimes that happens when the enemy is trying to take hold again. But because there's a lack of trust of who Jesus has redefined who I am and transformed me of who I am, the previous thoughts then start coming back. And I take what Jesus has done for granted because of just previous sin that I've committed. And it becomes harder for me to believe that I have been and am forgiven. And the Lord does not want me to live in that shame anymore, because he's already taken me out of it and he's made me a new person. And usually when I'm not spending time with him, I forget that, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, I'm forgetting his word. And so it's been really sweet to be reminded. Like, it sounds weird to say it's really sweet when he reminds us, but it is really sweet when he reminds us, like, hey, come back to me. Like, be with me, because I will remind you who you truly are. Not what you were, not what you used to be or what you used to call yourself or others used to call yourself. I made you new. Like, trust in that. And so, yeah, that's usually the point I realize the lack of time with Jesus is affecting how I think of my situations, of myself and of God. And it passes down in discipleship, because I just don't have the confidence within myself. So therefore, I don't have the confidence that the Lord has given me to be able to disciple others. And so everything I tell them or what I get to communicate with them, it just feels like, oh, I don't even know if I'm saying the right thing, instead of letting the Holy Spirit move and trusting that Jesus is working through me. That's one of the inward effects. Outwardly, I think sometimes I'm like, I don't really know what to say in discipleship, like discipling others. And also I lack the accountability of them, like being in their word or being like spending time with Jesus, whatever that looks like. That accountability is not there anymore because I'm not doing it myself. So it's like, why would I want someone to hold me accountable for something I'm not even doing?
Yeah. What is it like for you when you first see one of your girls start spending time with Jesus on their own outside of their time with you?
Yeah, that is, when we get to see that, like, it's such a joy. It's such a win to get to see them wanting to grow towards the Lord for themselves. Like, it is so fun getting to do it alongside them. It is so fun getting to take them, like, hey, let's go through the Bible, or let's have abide time together, or things like that. Like, it's so fun getting to do it with community. But when they're getting to do it for themselves, it's such a victory. It's like, thank you, Jesus, that you're growing this desire to get to know you even more than what I can do. Like, this is something they are choosing. This is not something that, I mean, I can't make this choice for them. But it is such a victory to see the shift. And then for them to come back, and usually they come back with the joy in their face of like, oh my gosh, this is what the Lord is telling me. This is what he's showing me. And it's like, it's a moment so full of joy, because it's like, yes, I want you to have this for yourself now. Like that's what you'll get to see with Jesus, is when you realize that he loves you, not because someone else told you, not because it could be from family tradition, because you believe it yourself. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful when it's like a choice to want to do it for themselves outside of our time. It's just,
Yeah, I love that. What would you say to a small group leader who wants this but feels like daily devotion is just one more thing to put on their already full plate?
Yeah. I'm like, I feel like I was in that point at one point. For small group leading. But the first thing that comes to mind is to ask ourselves, like, who are you doing this for and why are you doing it? If being a small group leader is just for the title, doing it for the wrong reason. And if it's not to make disciples who make disciples and help be part of growing God's kingdom through the current mission field that is our campus, then there may need to be a reevaluation of who we do this for and why we are doing it. And so those are always the two questions I go back to, of like, who am I doing this for? Why am I doing it? Because having a daily devotional with Jesus gives us so much perspective, who we get to do this for and why we get to do it, in a sense that it removes our self. It removes our thoughts of being so busy and whatnot, that it is just like, actually, I can't do any of this well. I can't honor my professors. I can't honor my classmates. I can't give gratitude when it feels stressful, or gratitude when, a project has just finished. I can't do it well if I'm not spending time with the Lord. Like, who am I? Who do I get to honor through this? All of that honor needs to go to Jesus. If I'm not spending time with him, it is very much going to go to myself. I worked for this. I got this. I put the time in. And that's not terrible, because the Lord has provided that. But then the honor isn't going towards him. It's not going to the glorification that is within him, that he is the one who has sustained me through this and will continue to sustain me. And not only that, but he was present and is present in the classrooms before I even got to finish my presentation, after and during the presentation. Like, that's just one example, but it is just the fact of asking those questions, like, who are we doing this for and why are we doing it? And I do know that, again, it's okay to start small if needed with the daily devotional with the Lord. And it's okay if sometimes it feels that way, like, oh my gosh, it feels like I already have so much things on my plate. Again, start small. Like, it is a discipline to grow. It is a discipline to continue to grow and continue to fester and continue to protect, to allow it to eventually, hopefully, not feel so much like a time frame, but then being able to take the Lord with you where you go, on campus, in the classroom. Any conversation that is happening, that happens outside of small group, outside of community, even within small group, And so protecting that time at all costs, because it should be non-negotiable. And when we cannot go out to make disciples of all nations like Jesus has commanded us, when we do not seek daily to know his voice, know the truth, know his character, his promises, his sacrifice, and know who he is, and like also know who he has called us to be, then the question of who are we doing this for really comes into evaluation and why we do it.
Thank you for listening to the Small Group Leader Podcast. Our goal is to equip and encourage you as you go out and make disciples who make disciples.